So now we've arrived at the fourth and final of the four cornerstones of the station, and it's a customer experience focus. Now, notice it's not just saying focus on the customer, because a lot of companies and a lot of people say, oh, I care about my customer, I focus on the customer. This is a little bit different because it's about the customer experience. Now, I'm going to suggest to you there are three dimensions with which we interact with our customers. You can look at this in your career with internal customers. Those are the people you work with. External customers, those are the people that your business serves or that you serve in what you do. It can be in your personal life, but let's talk about those three dimensions. And I'm going to use, we're in the restaurant here, the fine dining restaurant called Aloe at High Point University, which is an incredible restaurant where I've dined many times. And I'm going to use that as the example of how we get to the customer experience. The three dimensions begins with processing. Processing consists of the elements of any transaction that you have with another person or with a business that you have a right to expect because you've chosen to spend your money, your time, your attention with that particular area. So if I'm here at Aloe, what do I have a right to expect? Well, I have a right to expect that the tablecloth is going to be clean and the napkin is going to be here, that the utensils have been sterilized and clean. I have a right to expect the meal's going to be good, right? I mean, I've chosen here as opposed to all of the other dining alternatives in the area. Those are things I have a right to expect. If they don't get this right, nothing else matters. I read in Harvard Business Review a while back that only 16% of organizations even have a list of what the non-negotiables are that a customer can expect. So if you just make a list, personally or professionally, about what the people that you deal with have a right to expect because they're spending their time, their money, their attention with you, you're in the top 16%. So if they don't get the meal right, if this isn't perfect, then nothing else matters. The second dimension is what I call service. And service removes friction from the process. It makes it easier to do business. So as I'm sitting here, if everything is great from a processing level, but the server comes up and is sweating and is too many tables and he's upset, it detracts from my meal. It detracts from what I'm spending money for and time with. It makes it tougher to enjoy my night. So service are those things that we do to eliminate that. It means the server is friendly. It means the server may ask my name and use it in conversation. It may mean that they go the extra mile to bring a little appetizer at the beginning or a little dessert afterwards to make it more enjoyable in regards to the choice that we've made to dine here. But the highest level is the experience. And the experience adds a couple different dimensions. It adds personalization and emotion. Now, personalization means that when I sit down, the server or the hostess comes up and says, gosh, Mr. McKain, it's great that you're back. We really appreciate your business. When I board a flight on Delta Airlines, they look down and they notice that I'm a frequent flyer. Many times they'll say, oh gosh, Mr. McKain, you've flown almost 3 million miles on Delta. We appreciate your loyalty. You know, that might sound like a little thing, but it's really a significant thing. A friend of mine for a long time is a author speaker named Joel Weldon. And Joel is in his 80s, been around for a long time, but he has a very profound thought. He'll stand in front of audiences and he will say, for everybody in the room, how many of you, by show of hands, have been bitten by an elephant? Nobody raises their hand, right? Then he says, how many of you have been bitten by a mosquito? And everybody raises their hand. Joel will pause a second for effect and he goes, see, it's the little things that get you. When it comes to creating an experience, a lot of times it's the little things that make a huge difference. Recognizing loyalty, using someone's name in the conversation. But the other dimension that I mentioned earlier is emotion. And that's not a word we talk a lot about in business, but it really is the critical factor. Why would I be loyal to something towards which I have no feeling? Every business, everybody wants loyalty. They want engagement. They want involvement. But yet you don't get engaged and involved and stay somewhere where you have no feeling about what you're doing. You know, part of the success here at High Point University is the engagement that it creates, not only with students, but with parents, with staff, with everybody here. The philosophy of High Point is that you're going to have an experience with caring individuals in a supportive environment. And all of that serves to create the emotion that creates the experience that engenders loyalty, because it hits on that fourth cornerstone of distinction. So think about how all three of those apply. If the meal is bad, I don't care how much the server smiles. But if the meal is good and the server smiles, it's okay, but it's transactional. But if the meal is good and the server smiles and they use my name and they thank me or they welcome me because it's my first time and we hope you come back, and they do something a little extra that's unexpected that really makes me feel great about the fact I've chosen to do business here, now you've created an experience. One of the things our company owns is the federally registered trademark on the term ultimate customer experience. And so that's a question I think every business should be asking. What is the ultimate experience that you can be creating for the people that you serve? It's a legendary story, and several other companies have adopted it, but the first I heard about was Amazon, that in every meeting that they have at Amazon, there has to be an empty chair. And that empty chair represents the customer. So at some point in every meeting, they look at that empty chair and they ask, now how would the person in that chair respond to what we're talking about right now? They ask about the customer in everything they do. That's part of what creates an ultimate customer experience. So to follow up on this fourth cornerstone of distinction, how do you create an ultimate customer experience? It begins by asking, what if everything went exactly right? At this point, a lot of people say, well, it never goes that way. I can't believe we're right. But if you don't ask the ultimate, you're never going to get close to it. If everything went exactly right, what would that look like, sound like, feel like? What would that be like? So here at Alo, the restaurant, they would make a list of, we greet the customer with a smile. We get them seated at the time of the reservation. We make a list of if everything went exactly right, that's what would happen. That's your first step. Second is, so what do we have to do to make it work out that way? In terms of how do we educate our team, and how do we order the food, and when do we serve? What do we have to do to make it work out that way? For every person, for every profession, for every business, that's going to be different, but the question remains the same. The third question is, what are the roadblocks? In other words, is there an old policy or old procedure that maybe we need to eliminate, or a new policy or a new procedure that we need to initiate? We need to find out what we need to do to eliminate the roadblocks that get in our way of providing this. The next question is, am I providing the tools that it takes to get the job done? In other words, am I doing the training and the education? That's part of why life skills are so important. That's one of the things that I love here about High Point University. The premier life skills university is, it's not just the mechanics of cooking the food properly, it's also the mechanics of what does it take to have a conversation. Part of the reason they have a restaurant like this, by the way, is so that students here develop the life skills of knowing what's a superior experience, so they can go out and create it for their employer and for their employer's customers. That's part of what we all have to do. So, the ultimate customer experience is really the completion of Cornerstone number 4, which is a customer experience focus. Look, at the end of the day, every business has to have loyal customers who refer you to their family, their friends, and their colleagues. It's key to success. So by completing Cornerstone number 4, you assure that you have implemented all of the 4 cornerstones of distinction.